time to get back into the grind of things. School's been hectic. It's all good. I got a lot of free time now because spring break starts, well, for me, Friday. So, I'm done watching everything. I finished Jungle Fury and Samurai last week. So, that put things in perspective. So, I was waiting to get done with everything before I started to get back into these reviews. So, I am done. So, it's time to marathon these things. One thing before I do jump into Turbo, though, is after watching everything, I am going to review In Space after I get done with this because I feel like I can explain my thoughts and opinions on In Space a bit better now because I've got a better sense of how to compare it to things and whatnot. Plus, I did talk to some people about some things about In Space that kind of brought out opinions of mine that I really couldn't put into words. So I will be redoing In Space once I get done with this. So my first Space review will be gone by the time this comes up. So, Turbo. What can I say that hasn't already been said about this season? I want to talk about something first before I really go into Turbo here. I want to talk about Car Ranger for a second. Now, I did talk about this briefly when I was reviewing Overdrive because I wanted to make a point about Sentai footage, Sentai stock footage. It does affect Power Rangers in some way unless you're RPM and to an extent Jungle Fury because those two seasons really didn't use much Geki Ranger and Go Onger footage. But Turbo, I think, along with Samurai, but I'll get to Samurai when I get to it, is one of the two seasons I believe that were handicapped due to the Sentai it was adapted from. Like I said, I'm not going to get into Samurai until I get to it, but this is going off of Car Ranger. If you know anything about Car Ranger, then you'll know it's a parody Sentai. I've seen 2 episodes of it, and I've only seen those 2 episodes, like I said back in my Overdrive review. It is a trippy, trippy show. The first episode is basically about them getting powers from a wizard who was like, here's the power of car constellations. Now that in its own right sounds really stupid. The 5 main rangers work in a body shop. The second episode is about this evil biker gang group basically taking all the cars in the world and making them rotate the planet in the other direction to stop the rotation. You want to know why all these people are trying to destroy the Earth? To impress a hooker at a bar on the moon. So let's just say Turbo didn't necessarily have the best footage to build off of. But that wasn't necessarily the only reason why Turbo flopped. There were a lot of bad decisions made, bad writing, and Divatox. Divatox is a problem in her own right. So, without further ado, let's get into the plot synopsis. Yes, I have the patience to go over this plot, not like I did with Overdrive, where it was just 45 minutes of me ripping the season a new butthole. I actually do have the patience to go over this season story, mostly because it's not really as complicated as it could be. But I do need to go over a lot of specific details in this season because it's usually the details that really screwed this season over a little bit. So Turbo was weird that it started with a theatrical movie release. And let's just say it wasn't necessarily a good movie to begin with. Basically, they had to rescue a wizard. I forgot his name. What was his name? Larigo. There we go. Thank you. Larigo, who's basically a friend of Zordon and Alpha, who was coming to Earth for some reason. And Divatox is trying to catch him. Divatox being a space pirate, and that's a problem for Divatox in her own right, so she could use his power to go to a mythical island to marry a demon. foolproof. Foolproof. You can't screw this up. You really can't. Feel a sneeze coming on. I'm allergic to crap. So the Rangers go and get him to save him. Once they get the turbo powers. Now, why they got the turbo powers is a problem in its own right. The Zeo powers were given to them because the Mighty Morphin powers were basically destroyed. They had no way to reuse the power coins ever. And looking forward into in space, the space powers were given to them because the turbo powers were seemingly cut off from their power source, so they couldn't use them anymore. There is no valid reason why they had to give up the Zeo powers. They're still perfectly intact. They grow stronger. I mean, look at what they did to Mondo. Well, what they supposedly did to Mondo at the end of Zeo. So there's nothing to say that the Zeo powers were broken or defective, so why give them to him? Well, Zordon's excuse was because the Zeo powers aren't strong enough to deal with this new threat. I was not once believed, sentence structure at its finest. I never once believed that the turbo powers were any stronger than the Zeo powers. Let's go with it. I think the main reason why he gave them to him in the movie was because they needed their keys to open a portal to the island that Divatox wanted to use Larigo to get to. It was stupid. It was an old wooden ship that they used, and there was like those little key slots in it, and it sent them through a wormhole. And they get there, and then Divatox starts reviving the demon using Kimberly and Jason's soul as sacrifices for like pure souls to release the demon thing or whatever. And he does revive, and then Divatox like cringes at the thing and doesn't really want to have anything to do with him anymore. Which is another problem I have with Divatox, and I'll get to that in a second when I get to the actual start of the show. They end up destroying the monster with the new Turbo Megazord, freeing Jason and Kimberly, which is kind of surreal because Jason never once asked her why he broke up with her. I mean, Tommy never asked her why Kim broke up with him over a letter. I already put my thoughts on that one back when I did Zeo. The movie is boring. I'm just going to say that flat. That was a base overview of the movie. It was, what, like an hour and 40 minutes? And most of it was them exploring, like, jungles and then riding on boats and exploring more jungles. And then there was, like, this really fight scene in a cave. And then the Turbo Megazord fight against the monster. It was mostly just them sitting around or walking around forests and stuff. It wasn't exciting in the slightest. And it was just a good forewarning of what was about to happen. When you have a big theatrical release and the movie ends up sucking big time, it's not a good sign of things to come, that's for sure. So on to the opening 3 part of the actual season, shifting to Turbo. We start off with Divatox rallying her Piranatrons, which were terrible minions, by the way, because they look like... Oh, that's the best way I can... Even though they never made that noise, that's the best way I can describe them, because they just look like retarded fish. You're like... I don't even know. They got beat up by cars later in the season, so just take that for what it is. Saying that the Power Rangers foiled my plans and I need to get payback on them. Problem I have with this. Once you saw the thing that you were trying to revive, I keep forgetting its name. I just know its suit was used for Dark Spectre and in space, so that's kind of weird when you start watching in space and like, wait a minute, they destroyed you already. Something stuck in my throat too. So why is she mad? They ruined my plans that I really wasn't going to go through with to begin with. Okay, so you're a butthurt space pirate. that's wanting to get payback on a group of Rangers from spoiling a plan that you kind of dropped out on when you found out what you were getting out of it. This is going to be good. This is going to be really good. I forgot to mention two things that came out of the movie real quick. One, Rocky hurt himself during a karate competition, martial arts competition. Steve Cargate, yeah, whatever. I've never been able to pronounce his last name right, so you know who I mean. The person who played Rocky ended up hurting himself sometime near the end of Zeo, and he kind of had to leave the show for it. So Rocky's no longer a Ranger, and it felt kind of disappointing, even though I wasn't necessarily the biggest fan of Rocky per se. And to replace him, he got Justin, who was like a 12-year-old. Brought a lot of controversy, and a lot of people seem to not like him all that much. Now, granted, he wasn't the best Blue Ranger or Ranger, period, but we've had worse. We've had much worse. Mac. Not calling out anybody's names, but Mac. Gotta take my shots when I get the chance. So, what is Divatox's big plan? Blow up the power the power plant to screw up the Rangers' graduation. Well, I'm done here. I'll see you guys next week. God, I hate this season. This is getting off to a great start. Turbo. Oh boy. So they basically jumped their graduation to go stop this bomb that's set to an hour. Because that's how you want to test your opponent's capabilities. So, I guess. I don't know. She's not very smart. She has a bomb fetish or something. She always likes putting explosives and things and setting them to a ridiculously long time limit or to something that's based off of like a prediction or something. Like there's this one episode later where she puts a bomb in a scoreboard and it would go off if the one team won. That's kind of risking it all, seeing how you probably don't know how the heck soccer plays, so you don't really know how to judge a team. And that's kind of overly complicated and stupid to begin with, because you could easily just go up there and just throw the bomb at them yourself and get a better success rate than what you were trying to accomplish, but that's for another thing altogether. So all that fiasco happens, and then Zordon and Alpha have to leave. For some reason, there's a portal that opens up. Lara goes, helps him go through the portal, and there's this really stupid thing of Divatox trying to close the portal, so the Rangers have to close the portal or else they'll get Zordon and Alpha will get crushed in the portal, but they manage to stop it, save Zordon and everything. They're gone. Strike 2. First strike was Rocky leaving, but strike 2. We get, in return, female Riddler and Gangster Alpha. Demetria, who is a woman that talks in questions, which really doesn't do anybody any good when you're basically threatening you need a situation or an answer or a solution right then and there. Yeah. Instead of doing what Zordon or even Gosei does, just telling him flat out, she asks a riddle. This helps so much. Thank you. Your help of epic proportions. And then this new Alpha, instead of going ay ay ay, he goes yo yo yo, yippee yi yeah. I'm like, yeah, I was expecting him to walk out with one of those hats on his head sideways or something with like with the clock hanging around his neck or something. Flava Flav Alpha edition or something, but he's annoying. He's all hood Alpha. I'm trying not to sound white. I'm not trying to sound like a sad white kid, but it's really hard to... You know what? Screw it. Strike 3. I'm calling that Alpha thing as a separate thing from the Demetria thing. Well, trust me, we're going to get much worse. Alongside that, Ernie's gone. Good old lovable Ernie. He's been the juice bar man since Mighty Morphin Season 1 all the way through Zeo. Why get rid of him? Strike 4. I know you can only have 3 strikes in baseball, but screw it. This season is so bad that it's going to get as many strikes as I freaking give it. They're going to have to deal with it. Fillers galore until we get to this episode called the Millennium Message. Basically, we're getting introduced to a space police robot from the future, per se, called the Blue Centurion, who comes to Earth with a message from what's called the Millennium Message. Basically, it's stating he's supposed to come there to show the Power Rangers that Divatox, Zed, Rita, and Mondo are going to team up and take over Earth at some point in the future, but they end up being stopped by another group of Rangers. I have no idea what that's foreshadowing. I couldn't possibly understand. I mean, they don't make it clear enough. But Divatox is the one that gets a hold of him first, so she sees the message, gets mad because she hates Rita and doesn't want to have anything to do with her, messes with his circuits to make him go against the Rangers. Justin fixes him, and he's like, okay, here's what I got, but the message is kind of broken up a little bit, so they don't get the entire message, but they get the idea that something's about to happen. And that's about as far as the relevance of the Blue Centurion goes. Even though he's quote-unquote the 6th Ranger of Turbo, he really isn't relevant outside of this. Stings, too, because he's actually kind of cool. To an extent, anyway. The next episode, we get introduced to 2 people, Carlos and Ashley. Carlos being a stuck-up dickwad on the soccer field, and Ashley kind of being a lackluster cheerleader. Episode really doesn't go much. It just doesn't really go far with anything. It's just there to establish these 2 characters for something later. And that something later is the passing of the torch 2 part, where we get introduced to TJ and Cassie also. Basically, the Rangers are going to like a camping trip or something, and Tommy and Kat get ambushed on the way. Tommy getting kidnapped in the process, and TJ and Cassie end up helping him, saving Tommy from getting put into a pit of horrors. There's probably nothing but the Overdrive theme song being looped over and over and over again. I mean, I can't really think of much worse than that. That, and they show Carlos and Ashley helping people escape when they get back to town when a monster's attacking. But the whole point of this episode, this 2-part, was to establish these 4 characters because they need to pass their powers on, because they've gotten to a point in their lives where they need to be free of their Ranger duties. Okay, that's a cheap excuse for basically removing 4 Rangers that we've had for about, what, MMPR Season 1, about half of it, and then about 2.5 seasons, half of MMPR Season 2, all of Season 3, and all of Zeo, and then about 3 seasons, because half of Season 2 and half of Turbo. About 3 seasons that they've been with the team, and you're just going to boot them because they're getting older? I have problems with this. TJ, I'm okay with, because TJ rushed in, helped Tommy, and showed he could fight pretty well. So I'm okay with TJ getting the role, especially with, I actually kind of found him to be a pretty good leader. But I think TJ's character becomes more relevant and stuff and in space. Cassie, well, she helped TJ, and she showed that she could fight also. So I'm okay with her getting the Pink Ranger spot. Justin stays along because, well, he's still young. Now we got the 2 fun ones, Ashley and Carlos. These are the 2 that I really don't understand. Carlos, because, well, he was a douche. Adam's reason is because, oh, you show compassion and great teamwork, which is kind of funny because about what, 4 or 5 episodes earlier when he was first introduced, he was a selfish soccer player that said, "I'm the best one here. Give me the ball and I'll help us win." Yeah, when you got a guy like that, definitely teamwork, expertise level guy there as you're putting on a team of superheroes that need to save the world. Way to go, Adam. At your brightest moment. And then Ashley, which doesn't make any sense because her and Tanya never shared the same screenshot together. Ever. Even in the passing the torch scene where they have them there. Yeah, they're looking up at each other, but they're never actually shown on camera at the same time. So how exactly did Cassie know to choose her? What am I up to? 4? Carlos, Ashley. 7 strikes. Did I mention that I hate this season? Okay, so now that debacle's out of the way, we get introduced to the Phantom Ranger next, whose energy signature they said comes from Eltar, which is where Zordon is from. He really doesn't do much in his first appearance. He really doesn't do much until a couple episodes later when we get introduced to General Havoc, who's Divatox's brother. This guy is good. He is the best villain in this season, hands down. But then again, it's not hard to accomplish, seeing how every other villain in the season's a bunch of morons, especially Divatox. But I'll get to Divatox when I get done with the story. But General Havoc has the idea of, I have a giant Megazord, Metallosaurus, if I got the name correct. Sends Metallosaurus down to fight the Rangers. Rangers can't seem to beat him. They lose the Megazord, and Havoc takes the Megazord up to his space base, which is the base of that biker gang from Car Ranger I was telling you about. Because if it looks like a weird rubber band ball, but it's actually like a ball of highways. Because you see like these little white dots shooting across it. That's actually cars. Car Ranger. Just go with it. Just go with it. So they lost their Megazord. Phantom Ranger has access to new Zords for them, so they go underground and find the rescue Zords. They end up blowing up Metalsaurus, but when they were looking through a book that came with the Turbo Megazord, because I think does a Megazord come with a book that has information on the Phantom Ranger. Why? He finds out that the Phantom Ranger's power is from a gem on his chest, like a little red ruby. So they try to steal that and they succeed, and they use it to link to power a battery source to control the Turbo Megazord and use it against the Turbo Rangers. So they stick it on the Rangers, and we have the Turbo Megazord versus the Rescue Megazord, and it's actually a really good fight scene. And they end up getting the Rescue Megazord close enough to where TJ jumps out, destroys the monster that was in charge of the assault, breaks the battery pack. They gain the 2 Megazords back from it. And then for some reason, General Havoc leaves after this, and so does the Phantom Ranger. I don't know why exactly, but they just do. Weird, huh? But we get to the finale here after a lot of filler episodes. Kind of going with the Zeo route, but I'll compare and contrast Turbo from Zeo here in a little bit because I have to. The 2-part finale, Chasing the Space, basically Demetria and the Blue Centurion go to Eltar to help Zordon because Eltar is under attack. After the Rangers lose both their Megazords and their weapons to a big monster that Divatox called, the thing managed to destroy the Turbo Megazord after the Rangers used the Rescue Megazord as a bomb to blow the thing up, and it didn't work. So they had to use their combined weapons and they flew it into the mouth of the monster, and it blew up, so they lost both their Megazords and their power weapons. So now they're basically down to just their fighting prowess. They end up going back to the command center, and Elgar, who's Divatox's slow in the head nephew, and I forgot the other guy's name. I don't care enough about these villains to remember their names. End up finding or seeing them fly across the air, and they chase them down and find the command center, which is weird because Mondo and Zed and Rita knew where the command center was, but Divatox didn't. Don't quite understand that. But they end up finding it and leading an all-out assault on the command center with no mentor or anything there to help them out. They basically get run over like a steam truck hit them. The whole command center goes down. The Rangers are fighting for their lives, and then Elgar places bombs around the place and blows it up. Not Zarita, not Zed, not Mondo, but Divatox is the one that beats the Rangers. Strike 8. Strike 8. So Divatox and the Piratatrons are looking for the Rangers and the remains, but a voice comes down and says they've been summoned to meet up with Dark Spectre on the Sumerian planet because Zordon's been captured. Ooh. So they all leave once they heard that Dark Spectre was the one requesting their call, and the Rangers' powers fade away, meaning that Ultar's fallen and their power source has been cut off. So they decide to chase after Divatox and save Zordon no matter what the cost. So with Justin's connections to Nasada, which is basically NASA, he goes in and says that the Rangers need their help to go into space and help Zordon out. So the 4 Rangers, aside from Justin, because he has to stay with his dad who's moving for job purposes, fly into space, and we get a subtext saying to be continued in Power Rangers in space. And that Turbo ended on a really good note. I mean, I'll admit, Chasing the Space is actually a really underrated finale. The only problem with it is that it's Divatox, the one leading the charge, not any of the other. I mean, I would have accepted Mondo doing this. I mean, as boring and as bland as the Machine Empire were, they actually showed themselves to be a legitimate threat from time to time. From time to time. I never quite understood how they took over the entire galaxy, per se. But they did show a few signs here and there of being a powerhouse. Divatox is a space pirate. What does she want with the planet? What does she want the Rangers? She's just butt mad because they screwed up a plan that she didn't really want to go through with after she found out what she was getting out of it. So what is her purpose of fighting the Rangers exactly? I don't understand this. And let alone, on top of that, she is an idiot. She is a kid. She's obsessed with blowing things up with bombs with ridiculously easy limits to get around for the Rangers to stop them from exploding. And on top of that, when she loses, she throws a second grade level hissy fit, kicking things around, slapping things around, screaming at people, hitting people, just whatever. She's throwing a hissy fit. And I can't take this woman seriously whatsoever. She's a terrible villain. She's down there with the Overdrive morons in terms of stupidity. I don't know how the Rangers lost to this woman. It was because of sheer luck that they found out where they were, even though I'm surprised they didn't know where the command center was to begin with. But still, if Zed, Rita, or Mondo did something like this, they would have done the same thing, that brings up a good question as to why they didn't ambush the command center either. Well, no, they established that the command center had a shield around it. So how the heck did Divatox take the shield down? Turbo. Just, this season. So what's the biggest problems with Turbo, aside from Divatox and her band of morons? Well, change. That's the best way I can describe Turbo's faults, is change. Getting rid of Rocky well, from behind the scenes it works, but in the show, I don't know why they couldn't have said, oh, just heal and you'll get your powers back. Change. Rocky goes. Justin takes over. I'm okay with him as a character, but I still don't like the idea of him being a Ranger. Zordon and the original Alpha leaving for some reason. I know in the season they said it was because the Eltar was under attack and we need to go there and help or something like that. But still, 3 episodes into the season, just go ahead and remove the mentor that's basically founded the Power Rangers and led them through everything. Okay. Getting rid of Ernie, that's a bit of a nitpick, but Ernie was such a lovable character. I mean, everybody loved him. You couldn't hate Ernie. And then the whole passing the torch fiasco was really forced. And it broke the whole thing of them finally being out of high school. But then again, they really weren't doing much with it to begin with. But then they bring them back into high school with 2 people that were on their way to somewhere completely different and decided to stay in Angel Grove because of the Ranger powers. And 2 people that didn't really seem to fit the status quo of being a Ranger when they first showed up. So it was a lot of dumb changes and decisions, along with an idiotic villain and just Car Ranger footage really didn't help things much either, because some of the filler episodes just made the Rangers look like complete morons at times, like getting baked into a giant pizza and nuts, rats, drats, curses, phooey, fiddlesticks. I think if you know what episode I'm talking about, then you'll understand why that was so bad. Ugh. So let's talk about the characters real quick. Tommy, Kat, Tanya, and Rocky Adam didn't really change much from Zeo. Yeah, they graduated, but they really didn't undergo much development, if any. Justin wasn't too bad as a character. I mean, he was actually on top of everything. Whenever something happened, he was the first one to jump into action. And he even went undercover and did some like stealth work at times. Like whenever the Rangers needed like detective work or something, he seeing how he was small enough, he was able to like derp around and figure things out. And he was actually a pretty capable fighter and could hold his own pretty well. TJ, I mean, it took me a while to sit down and think about TJ for a little bit, because at first I didn't necessarily think he was a great red. And I actually thought he filled the quote of Space Blue a lot better than he did his Turbo Red. And I still believe that, and I'll get to that when I redo my In Space review next, because there's a little thing between Andros and TJ that I kind of want to talk about. But as Turbo Red, I kind of did find him to be a pretty competent leader. He took things into his own hands when needed, like during the whole Turbo Megazord being taken thing, where he's the one that jumped out, fought the monster one-on-one, saved the Megazord. He's the one that opted to blow up the rescue Megazord to stop that monster. He's the one that sacrificed the weapons to blow him up. He's also the one that led the charge to defend the command center. He's the one that directed that they go into space to chase after Divatox and save Zordon. He knew what to do. TJ may not have been a strategical leader, but when it came to knowing what to do and when to do it, TJ knew what was up. And this is going to carry over into In Space, because I'll get into that more when I get into In Space. And it kind of goes to my point of Space having a 2-leader system. But TJ wasn't that bad of a leader. And when I actually started to sit down and think about him in Space and then look back at him in Turbo, he was actually a really good Red Ranger. I think a pretty underrated one at that, when I think about it. He's a pretty cool character, too. He's a real relaxed dude. He's really relaxed, kind of cool. I always like TJ as a character anyway. Carlos kind of started off as a bit of a douchebag, and he just, after he joined the team, he just kind of loosened up and became one of the gang. He didn't really change much in Turbo. He kind of went through some changes in Space. Same with Ashley and Cassie. They were just kind of like the girly best friends and stuff. But once again, they really didn't undergo any change here in Turbo from when they were introduced. And actually, neither did TJ when I think about it, or Justin. Turbo really didn't have any development. It was all about stupidly changing everything up for a bunch of unnecessary reasons and falling to a complete moron of a villain. I hate this season. I can't emphasize that enough. This season is bad. But what did I mean by compare it to Zio? I did my review. Oh my god. Just look at her face. That sums up Divatox really well. Oh my god, that's actually kind of creepy. I don't want to look at that anymore. I'm legitimately freaked out at that. I'm going to cover your face up. There we go. When I said I was comparing this to Zio is when I went back and started thinking about Zio after I got done with watching Mystic Force, something about Zio just kind of kicked in. And it's that I said that Zio was really bare bones, really dry, nothing really interesting happening. And I hold firm on that statement. Zio was really boring and lacking any interesting subplots or events or villains or anything outside of the opening two-part of Zio beginning. Turbo is full of moronic changes, stupid writing decisions, and a retard villain to the max. But Turbo is a lot more interesting in the long run than Zio was. So yes, I'm going to go as far as to say as I wouldn't necessarily consider Turbo the worst Saban season ever, because I kind of consider Zio on even par with Turbo. Bold statement. I know a ton of people that legitimately like Zio, and one person who has Zio as his favorite Power Ranger season ever. But when I sat down and watched Zio, I was bored out of my mind. But Turbo, I was more interested, but at the same time I was a lot more annoyed. So I'm going to go as far as to say this. They both suck evenly. Turbo was more interesting, but it annoyed the crap out of me. It was really dumb. Zio wasn't stupid and it didn't annoy me any, but it had nothing going for it. It was boring as all heck. Even Megaforce was more interesting than Zio was. The whole Robo Knight learning to become a human thing was a lot more interesting than Zio in its entirety. Yes, I said it. Shut up, Ronald. He's probably laughing his brains out, saying, "What did I do?" Because I said that. You know what I'm talking about, Ronald. You know. I love calling him out in these videos every time I mention Megaforce in some way. That man hates Megaforce more than necessary. So yes, I will go as far as to say Zio is tied for my second least favorite season ahead of you know what. I don't think I need to state the obvious anymore. But still, Turbo is just Car Ranger footage, not necessarily cooperating with the show. Moronic villains, stupid writing, change choices, whatever. The only thing I will give Turbo is that its finale, Chasing the Space, isn't bad by any means. It's actually a really good two-parter that led into my favorite Power Rangers season ever. Spoilers for my next review. I love In Space. I love In Space. And it was a really good lead into In Space and did get me excited when I was watching Turbo. I skipped all the other seasons that I watched prior to starting on Mighty Morphin and going through, but I had to rewatch In Space just to finish the story. So I call it Turdbo for a reason. Power Rangers Turdbo. But with all the crap I give this, I will say it's still better than Operation Overdrive. Kind of. I might make a video explaining my reasons for this, because I actually know a couple people that think Turbo is worse than Overdrive, but I have my reasons for considering Turbo and Zeo, for that matter, better than Overdrive. And I'll do some weird clarification list type videos when I get done with the whole fiasco, because I'm going to do like a wrap-up thing when I get done with Samurai. So, sorry it took me so long to finally get around to this one, but I finally got time. I'm done watching every season, like I said at the beginning of this video, so I got more time. I'm not going to start watching Digimon until I get done with these reviews. These reviews are my main priority right now. So, on to the next thing. I already reviewed the season. This was the first Power Rangers season I reviewed. But after watching every season and then watching Mighty Morphin through Turbo again, I felt like I can explain what made Space work. Rewatching Time Force, rewatching Lightspeed, rewatching SPD and RPM and Mystic Force and everything, I think I could finally put my thoughts of the season into better words than I did the first time. So, I will be re-reviewing my favorite season of all time, Power Rangers in Space, next time. So, see you on the Astro Mega Ship, guys.